Charles Dickens and the Law. This is written by the article published in the Virginia Quarterly, Charles Dickens and the Law, Robert Coates. So now let's start. Robert Coates. Some of the important details of the life of Charles Dickens are as familiar to many of us as the various qualities of mind and heart, which we have come to associate with such memorable characters as David Copperfield and Philip Pirrip, otherwise known as Pip or Easter Summerson, and Little Dorrit, Audius. Wolves, Jaggers, and Stray were three lawyers whose names suggest no strong real admiration. As a boy, Dickens knew poverty. His father was a clerk in England's Navy Pay Office. He was as well all too relaxed when it came to spending the modest salary he earned. When Dickens was 12 years old in 1824, his father was sent to prison because he had accumulated debt and lacked the means of paying them. This prison, Marshalsea. So the name of the prison is Marshalsea. I can highlight it. Marshalsea. This prison, Marshalsea. You remember the name, the prison, Marshalsea. Figured prominently in Little Dorrit. Even at a bit in the life of young Dickens, who spent time behind bars in accordance with prevailing custom. A debater's family often accompanied him when he became locked up. As a child, Dickens also worked for extremely low wages in shoe blackening factory. Shoe blackening, where the shoes are blackened. You know, the black color shoes are colored. So, a shoe blackening factory. He pasted labels on bottles. In his spare time, he wandered the street of London, penniless, led curious to understand the teeming confusion of a great old city. It was only the death of his paternal grandmother that enabled his father to be released from prison. She left a small legacy to her son. The lesson would never be forgotten as a novelist who was forever reminding his reader, though the working of one and another plot, how arbitrary fate can be and how good can come of bad, or of course vice versa. At 15, Dickens was studying law at an attorney apprentice. He mastered shorthand. He read legal text long and hard. He also, in a matter of months, became bold. He loved the English language, dreaming of using it one way or other. In 1829, so this is another aspect, that he loved reading, and he read legal text long, hard. He also had a matter of months become bored. He loved English language, dreaming of using it in a way. He wanted to use English language in a very different way, in a multiple way, or in a very, multiplicity in different means sense. In 1829, he became a reporter for the Code of Chancery. So this Code of Chancery is very significant because this is for the special law provision, and what is that, we'll understand it, whose majestic inscrutability would decades later dominated Bleak House. In 1832, he was bored with that job too. He tried journalism, first the True Sun, and then Mirror of Parliament, and then Morning Chronicles. His specialty was parliamentary reportage. He had a keen eye for 19th century English politics, its moral posture, its moments and longer of the theatre, both high and low, its possibilities and its sad limitations. So he was keen for the parliamentary reporting because he was reporting parliaments, and then the English politics, how people are fighting election, how they are establishing, how morals and the society is going on, which direction, ideals, images, and the representation of the society. Everything he was trying to understand. He also had developed a compelling manner of narrative presentation, strong suggestive goals. He worked quickly, he observed exactly, he rendered accurately. So I think this is one of the significant, the quote which we can write here, that he He worked quickly, he observed exactly, and he rendered accurately. Okay, this is the quote which I hope you will remember all, and this is what this quote is there. So uh, he he worked quickly, he observed exactly, he rendered accurately. Okay, so he worked quickly, he observed exactly, he rendered accurately. Moreover, he was astonishingly energetic, a quality he would never stop possessing. He travelled anywhere and everywhere in search of good political story. All London became his routine beat. All England easily attempted him if he felt the story demanded that exactly effort. Inside his born even then, a writer's desire to expand upon incidents, conveying a good atmosphere, give moral shapes to particular factuality. In December 1833, the monthly magazine published Dickens' first sketches of London life. In August 1834, he began using the name Bose, and by February 1836, at the age of 24, he had published sketches of Bose. So 1834, 1836, he published that sketches of Bose. With the additional explanations little illustrative of everyday life and everyday people. Shortly thereafter began the first of his Pickwick pieces, the posthumous paper of Pickwick Club. By now he was ready to marry and shift course as a writer. He abandoned the writing of conventional journalism, though he worked for a while, 2 years, as an editor. At the same time, he immersed himself in his own world, reported on the working of his mind's imagination, an exceedingly vigorous life. As soon enough, a substantial segment of English reading public, rich and poor, and many in between, became familiar with the antique as something soberly edifying, carrying on of Samuel Pickwick and his fellow clubsmen, Nathaniel Winkle, Tracy Tupman, Augustus Snodgrass, and those they met. After Alfred Jingle, Dr. Slemmer, Mr. Wardle, and his daughter Bella and Emily, his spinster sister Rachel, Samuel Weller, Job Trotter, and landlady Mrs. Barden, not to mention these two shady lawyers, Dodson and Fogg, and that shrewd master of real politics, the lawyer Perker, Samuel Pickwick, we all know, survives good lawyers, and even it seems the temptation of love. He retires to country with his seventh Sam Weller for a long and restful life. Dickens, on the other hand, with the publication of Pickwick Papers in book form, 1838, had ahead of more than 30 years of demanding labor. No matter the success those years brought, there was in his grade of storytelling and unyielding attachments of so short to his early social and moral experiences. He worked then over repeatedly in the later novels Bleak House, Hard Times, Great Expectations, Tales of Two Cities, Little Daughter. Down and out English life, the exploitation and not least miscarriages of justice. No claim, no money, no amount of achievement influence seems enough to stop from looking closely to a mention he both loved and yet found urgently need of reform. Nor did his success as a writer and an eager public speaker, if not performer, prevent him from going back time and time again to memories generated by earlier life. The child in a death's prison, the youth struggled with harsh enemies' life, and young man observing lawmakers at their shilly-shallying, or a corrupt worst and above all the apprentice writer taking note of lawyers, who of course are right there when men and women go to prison or lose whatever right or privileges they may have had, or find themselves in a severe affrays because the law works this way rather than that way. So this is a phrase we can use, the law work this way rather than Right, so this we can say about law. The law worked this way rather than that way. Behalf of these people rather than those. Behalf of these people. Behalf of these people rather than those. Charles Dickens, in his 50s, most celebrated writer in Britain, still scanned hungrily London's slow life, a substantial population indeed, and doing so gave us not only memorable character, Job Bleak House, the Dorrit of Marshalsea Prison. So this is what the Job of Bleak House. Marshalsea Prison. This we should remember. Marshalsea Prison. Okay, the prisoner Magwitch. But also terribly essential moral issues to consider, and he would surely have hope to connect in their continuing significance to our considerably later life. Again and again, lawyer figure in the penetrating enactment of the ethical conflict with Dickens insisted on making a central element of his most important novel in Bleak House. A course of issue is the not lawyers but law itself, its awesome, pervasive, perplexed, unnerving presence. Even in Dickens' life, some of tedious, if not outrageous aspect of London's Chancery. So this is tedious rather than outrageous. Chancery. Chancery Code has come to reform, and too, Dickens knew when he wrote Little Dorrit that the very Marshalsea prison he described and knew as a young inmate no longer was giant debtor, but of old, filled with entire families whose crimes was an inability to pay their bills. For all this urgent responsiveness to Victorian dilemmas, Dickens was a normal visionary who wrote subspecies eternities, hence the continuing provocations and edifying satisfaction of his novels, not to mention the still mighty power of his caricature. The Fog of Bleak House, after all, still obtained the laws itself offer many of those caught in exertions any number of frustration, confusion, delay, men, women, children, still themselves irritated and confounding and outrageous, finally maddened by cases which affect them deeply, seem to go on, maybe not for generation that happened in Jarndyce, but long enough for particular children to suffer in extended custodial fight for particular worker and families to suffer, while the responsibility for safe, dangerous environment pollution is argued in the code of months which become years. Yet Bleak House is much more than a novel that portrays the outcome of a legal impasse. Bleak House is much more than a novel. It's a portrays outcome of a legal impasse. Portrays outcome of legal impasses. Too much is made. Too much is made. One can argue about the protracted nature of the celebrated Jarndyce litigation. In one enumeration made in well-known first chapter, Dickens does indeed mention procrastination, but he also mentioned trickery. He mentioned evasion and spoliation. He even makes reference to a brother, surely of interest to his proudly self-conscious age, where the social science, especially psychology and psychiatry, are thought to explain so much as, nor is that necessarily applicable to our contemporary scene intended as a piece of novelist coming preoccupation. Bleak House is ultimately about the character even in occasionally professions such as law or medicine come out, and that how so much called practitioners kids various temptations fail to do so, and how certainly lawyer or doctor justify his work come to term with his perceived obligations, respond in mind and heart to hurt the vulnerability, the alarm if not panic of his client, his patients. Even as Middlemarch we see George Eliot trying to comprehend the fate of Dr. Lydgate, the transformation in an oddly idealistic young doctor into an all too by his own early and high standard, compromised and self-serving one. The many chapters of Bleak House offers their own chronicles of profession, various practices, its possess a purpose, various interpreted and alas not always too good. So this is what about Bleak House. All Dickens lawyers talking horn of Bleak House is surely the highest in rank, and that is the one who had achieved the most professional success. He is a distinguished lawyer and advisor to one of England's most powerful families. True, Dickens tips his hands, and he so often does, with the name of Dedlock. Sir Leicester is indeed a baronet who, with other English 19th century nobilities, had it nowhere. And social foolishness, the morbid, the moribund paralysis, intellectuals and morals of particular upper caste is more than indicated in the early chapters of Bleak House. But Sir Leicester is nevertheless rich and influential, and he eventually learned more decent than many of his ilk, and to be his lawyers is well to be a notable success. Talking horn is no lawyer tangle, arguing his way to no apparent purpose in the obscure. Okay. Muddy fog enshrouded trench of the law. Mr. Tangle, says the Lord High Chancellor, lately something bracelet under the eloquence of that learned gentleman. Mauld, says Mr. Tangle knows more of Jarndyce and Jarndyce than anybody. Is famous for it, supposed never to have read anything else since he left school. Have you concluded your argument? Mauld, no. Write your points. Feel it mine, dirty, transmit loudship is a reply that slide out of Mr. Tangle. Several members of the bar are still to be heard, I believe, says the Chancellor with a slight smile. 18 of Mr. Tangle's friend, each armed with the little summary of the 1800 sheets, pop up like 18 hammers in a piano forte, make 18 blows and drop into the 18 places obscure. So this is what a very significant this reference related to Bleak House. 18. This 18 is very significant. Okay. For talking horn, such duty transmitted in ingratiating bound and scrapping the obscurity is hardly the point of legal career. He holds his own with the best is managed, even to have the high and mighty with which they step with him around. Indeed, cower before his acquired legal knowledge, the fact of their personal life which inevitably becomes his property. Here is in a description by no less than the wife of Sir Leicester Dedlock. As she had just told her daughter that she dreaded a certain person, the daughter asks, "An enemy?" The mother replies, "Not a friend, a one who is too passionless to be either. He is Sir Leicester Dedlock's lawyer, mechanically faithful with attachment and very jealous of the profit, privilege, and reputation of being master of the mysteries of great house a bit further on the land expended. He is indifferent to everything but his calling. His calling is the acquisition of secret and holding possessions of such power, and they give with no sharer or opponents it still further on her hands added. He is of course handsomely paid and associated almost on a footing of equality with the highest society." So this is what the description of lawyer, and lawyer description means it is law. So this is what we talk about lawyer. Okay, that is about as far as Dickens really want to go in explicit psychological analysis. He does not. It does let Lady Dedlock apprehensively elsewhere in the novel turn into an occasion for the psychological speculation rather than diagnosis. Whether he be cold and cruel, whether immovable in what he has made his duty, whether absorbed in love of power, whether determined to have nothing hidden from him in ground where he has buried among secrets all his life, whether he in his heart despises of splendor of which his distance beam, whether he is always treasuring his upslide of the fence and inaffability of his gorgeous clients, whether he be at any all this it may be that my lady had better 5,000 pairs of fashionable eyes upon in the distrustful vigilance than 2 eyes of his rusty lawyer with his whip of neckcloth and dull black breeches ties with ribbons at knees. Still a mood of suspicion and fear and guilt is not to be confusion with a clear, precise moment of apprehended truth. Talking horn we know. Talking horn we know listens and stalks and from aspect of it outright alarm, but his exact purpose are not evident, and if Dickens believe that we are alive, what we manage to prevent ourselves to the world around. Put differently, the description of the given social profession reality for 19th century novel is sufficient psychological for many of today's readers. However, Talking Horn, enigmatic but exceptionally significant, involved in his long and darkly suggestive story of chronicle. The more we search for motive and ruling comprehension for us of 20th century, and the less satisfactory, I suppose, Dickens' stubborn refuse become in this tantalizing, wherein chance of death analyzed, as we call more. He passes out into streets and walk, and behind him, under the shade of lofty many of his difficult mortgage affair of all kinds, treasured up, and he is in the confidence of very trick and highlight tell if family secrets, yet is not voice a mile of them don't go home. Here we are granted drama, even melodrama, certainly we note a notch of irony. The poignant irony, though it we show no sympathy perhaps at this moment in frustration, if not annoyed condensation, we begin to remind ourselves that Dickens is not George Eliot, after all, or Tolstoy. He was, that is to say, not notably enchanted by possibilities offered by the novel for the analysis of personality or moral life, and it prompted by the various emotional reasons each for us find compelling. Yet that observation is still too categorical and unsatisfying. In fact, Dickens was a direct critic of Kafka and Flannery O'Connor. He believed in his literal truth that exaggeration aimed to apprehend. He believed in that down-home concrete reality which inspired his flight of fancy called caricature. What were they, those caricatures, but emphatic statement in respect to speciality, silent personal qualities whose moral import and enough the author believed to be well worth a particular literary efforts. Moreover, when Dickens wants to explore rather distinctly a certain character mind, he does so without hesitations or awkwardness. Here is Bucket's presentation to us. Bucket. Bucket, 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 bucket. Here is Bucket present us to the Bucket, first detective to enter English literature. Bucket, whose activity is also connected with the legal system, Dickens wanted to portray. Bucket, who was as much as urban walking man as talking horn. Otherwise mildly studious in his observations of human nature, and on whole of benignant, philosopher not disposed to be served upon the follies of mankind. Mr. Bucket pervades a vast number of houses and strolls about in infinity of streets or outward appearance rather languishing for what is in friendly condition towards his species and drink most of them. He is free of his money, affable in his manner, innocent in his conversation, but though the placid stream of his life, there glides this uncurrent of forefinger. Thus last phrases may not be kind of abstract declaration. We have, alas, found so congenial the superhero, go as a factor in our mental activity, but forefinger will do as means of reminding us that the fellow bucket, like others, let's pray, who hunt down criminal, supposed or actually sympathetic by voices which worry about what is right and what is wrong. Voices which do urge that such worries not to be altogether abstract, but rather worked into forbid of even corrupt occupational life. If Bucket is a convert moralist, then that is talking horn is not immoral nor one gathered. He seems to be without moral and this of his kind and lofty one whose prompt a laugh, even panicking, while he goes about his weighty business. In talking horn, Dickens may have all too uncanny and anticipated our contemporary scene as a supposed value-free social science and proclaimed worth of professional neutrality and dispassionate claim of adversarial system, not to mention the carefully cultivated aspect and anonymity of our psychiatrist. Talking horn is contained, cool, oh so cool, as the saying goes. A real professional such as person is best probed perhaps by a psychological observer keenly attentive to the powerful and influence social and cultural norm, exactly human. Human motivations, not to mention behavior. Dickens was such a psychological observer. As Bucket, it is not just a talent, latent moralism which attract our interest in him. He is one of those relatively minor characters in Dickens' novel who comes to attract our strongest scrutiny, if not perplexity, because his various activities and attitudes remain, thus needless to say, of our own continuing social and ethical dilemma. Bucket is on whose initial goes after such good and decent people as Gridley and George, and true Lo, and behold our dear and defenseless Joe, the incarnation of Bleak House of all that is vulnerable and innocently injured in his high-powered life we call civilized. Why such pursuit? Why all these people hounded Joe? What Dickens thought about Joe in containing in one of those memorable pieces he ever wrote. And there he sits munching and graving, looking up at great crash on the summit of St. Paul's Cathedral, glittering above the red-violet tinted cloud of smoke. From the boy face, one might suppose that a scared enable and his eyes crowning confusion of the great confused city, so golden, so high, so out of its reach. There he sits, the sun going down, river running fast, and crowd flying by him too, stream, everything moving to him, suppose, and to until he is stirred up move. What kind of spectators haunted down such as child? Why, a man who has a job to do. Is Joe guilty of crime? Is he not? Never mind urban problems and problems of class and caste. And never mind a child's hurt life, a city rampant evil as it bears down on those least able to protect themselves, assert their claim to citizenship. After a while, this harsh moralistic bucket begin to win us over. He is never mind what urban problems. So these are the hard cruelties of the life, where how the city life affect and how the city life kills the emotions of young and vulnerable. We know that this is one agent of law who will not be gratuitously mean-spirited. He has driven Joe out of city to his death because he believed him wrongly to have been criminal. But Dickens is unwilling to pursue his matter as far as he might, and personally good worker who obeyed his superiors and hurt others. No matter this decency, this merit. Rather quickly we see Bucket befriending all the people we have come to love. He ward off the small weeds for Sir Leicester, help preserve a marriage that of the Snagsby, work hard if in vain to rescue Lady Dedlock and discover who is a Hortense who really killed Talking Horn. Now we are pleased this is professional man who clearly acts in the service of God. Again, one poses of the issue now is a form of question. Why did Dickens pursue matter in quite another direction, explore the matter of loyalty, efficiency, hard-working professional, and oddly well-intentioned and honorable, whose loyalty to a given job, given social economic system persuaded him and jobs of his world would have to be made to stop loitering and beginning preventing, distracting and disturbing the rest of us. Perhaps the answer is that Dickens, indeed the entire 19th century, had yet to feel desperate. We have come to feel hopelessly so often caught in grips of one and another totalitarian system. The utter evil, the everyday evil worked into daily lives of millions of law-abiding citizens of the utter evil, everyday evil worked into the daily lives of millions of law-abiding citizens. So this is what the reality. Okay, I repeat the statement. The utter evil, everyday evil worked into the daily lives of millions of law-abiding citizens of this and that. The evil of Holocaust and Gulag were surely beyond the exuberantly reformist Christian sensibility. But his moral institutions as broad and deep in his moral yearning, and so Bucket for more than a few pages deeply troubled us. We have heard one of self-proclaimed totalitarian functionary after another, doctor and lawyer among them, assert their loyalty to duty and exact for what they intended are doing others. In Victorian legal system, it's working, its possibility for some, it's containing worse, and Dickens keep managing to embody our century more dilemma in the novelistic tradition. They have been considered by Conrad and Saul Sentenzi, an introduction of political and philosophical essay by Camus and Hannah Arendt. One great principle of English law, Dickens tells us, is to make business for itself. No wonder rather than one attorney of Bleak House gets holds a role in a card gaming situation in which the the dealer gets all the winning cards. Over and over, Dickens emphasizes the ordinary in Holes and regular and conventional. Mr. Holes is a very respectable man. He has not very large business, but he is a very respectable man. He is allowed by the greater attorney who have made good fortune and are making them to be a most respectable man. He never misses the chance in his practices, which is making a respectability. He is reserved and serious, which is also mark of respectability. His digestion is impaired and is highly respectable and is making hay, which is flesh, and 3 daughters of his father are dependent on him in whole of town. So this is what a very kind of satirical language we are here. Okay, and that is what I start from here. Respectable. Yeah, Mr. Holes is a respectable man, and this respectable is something very significant. So this we need to Mr. Holes. Mr. Holes. There is, I fear, an account of all too contemporary we, unless hard-working, thoroughly loyal, occasional but discreetly troubled citizens, always at a ready for Alka-Seltzers, maybe if necessary, a visit to psychiatrist for our psychosomatic ailments. And as we prepare with our psychological and more justification, I do it for my wife, my children, I do it for my family, my very well deserving family. So hand off you with the forefinger, you preachy cultural essayist or social critic, you thinly disguised moral theatrician, masked as lecturer, who come to one or another university. In Great Expectations, Dickens continues to explore his theme, the relationship between the practice of professional law and moral life. One hopes to present its predicament, if not outrageous demand, of all. The lawyer Jaggers is surely one of Dickens' best-known characters. He is strong, hugely successful, and just plain huge barrister, so strict, legal nevertheless, of London to the accompaniment of everyone. Dickens knew how hard press life was for thousands of English families in mid-19th century, and knew legal side of such desperation, a jungle of suspicion, of fear and hate. He was specially attentive to the meaningless and spitefulness and the crazy outbursts of anger, tricky and cunning and response the more lies which characterize so-called low life, hungry, jobless, mean women, children, and few, if any, prospect become reduced to a fate not on marginally in respect to socio-economic character, but also with respect to its very humanity. As Dickens remained as a bleak house with Easter summers and a little dot with the character who named titles and novel, human dignity is not really ever distinguished, only put in severe jeopardy, but there are plenty of those jeopardy for those people Jaggers knew so well, and to this day the problem remains. What can an honest, competent lawyer do, even given hard fact of the continuous and several exploitations of man and woman by their fellow creatures? The very name Jaggers, needless to say, suggests the cutthroat quality of particular existential situation. One is a bit indirect, uneasy, evasive here. Jaggers himself is not so easy to write off, and yet another of Dickens' villains lawyers. He is imperious and gruff. He is manipulative as well. An attorney of his caliber and practice would naturally be. He strayed his secret skirt and edge of law. Bullies stranger and associates keep all sorts of trick on his sleeves, and yet is by no means a moral monster. Is oddly compelling, even touching in his blunt poses of neutrality, aloofness, skepticism. More we get to know him, the Dickens want us to do that by securing a character from the limitations, and more we wonder if his purpose and Dickens felt in marking him arresting. He is after all instrument by Pip's moral spiritual journey. He is also capable of saving soul, and to amid hellish life he observed and with limitation dominated, and he shows evidences of the constant hand washing which bars no recognition of just how sordid a given job was. In sense of that Jaggers is a lawyer who has to work in a world exceptionally flawed by sin and suffers and somehow not himself hopelessly into world. No suggestion he profit from that, and person who wields his influence and receives the urgent entreaties of bewildered and impoverished population of London, and a lawyer who can pick and choose among would be client. His very credibility as a character, Dickens' moral seriousness in his point, his literary career. We don't laugh at Jagger or with him either, at various people with whom he worked, nor do we simply enjoy his brusque power, his moment of mocking arrogance, his clever instinct of suffering. We begin to feel lonely and himself. He belonged to those who wait for him. Molly, for the instance, a servant woman whom he defends on a murder charges. She was tramp, wild and crude. Upon her acquittal, she went to work for him. We learn, Estilla's mother and father being the convict Magwitch Pip benefactor. Dickens unashamedly vowed, such as a tight-knit plot, a reminder to all of us how intimately we are connected to other and member of the particular society. Molly is an animal barley under control. We are persuaded Jaggers and keep in himself a predator of 1 minute, not hesitating to push aside, while fighting as someone holds room and proverbial dumb beast another, lost in mute and confused, even not hence not able to show his swagger, and cunning is crude and relevant. His legal associate Wimmick also tells us something about ourselves. I fear this lovely, genuine, generous, thoughtful and considerate man become a villain agent of greed and brute force at work. Dickens once again wants to emphasize the duality of our nature, the capacity we have to split ourselves in half, life without shame and contradictory lives, acquisitive and coldly personal under one set of circumstances, tactful and sensitive and utterly human another. John Wimmick Walworth Castle is necessarily just as refused bastion and place which offer protection against a marauding, normally bankrupt demand of covetous world outside. There is an element of self-reliant yeoman, once England's prudest calm. He builds his plant, he fixes things, and he dreamed of yet another project to make life in country more relaxed and enjoyable. But even in this castle, he is always storing things, calculating how much property he is able to accumulate. He is not a lavish party giver, some bent on behalf of self-advertising consumption, but he knows the reassuring comfort that accumulated property can bring, and he is willing to be day after day in a law office, his strong-faced sidekick of a big deal criminal lawyer, do his various errands, collect cash from him and other gather help work up his cases. In today's English term, Jaggers was a flamboyant, sly, if not always unkind, and something socially discerning and compassionate barrister, whereas Wemmick was in his firm chief solicitor, someone who did not need to wish his hand after seeing each client, and was rather a trip to present work and perhaps for some of us today. Dickens was not, however, beyond imagining redeeming possibilities in the lives of individuals he created and in work they did. Sidney Carton, in A Tale of Two Cities, well-known character indeed in the world Dickens created especially to high school and in some one time. He drinks too much, he seems aimless, sad, troubled. He helps the lawyer Strayer's free Charles Darnay, who has been accused of committing treason as spy of France. Unlike Bleak House and Great Expectation, his novel does not directly approach the law as a profession. So this is also a good term, law as a profession. Law as a profession. So how do we take law as a profession or law as a remedy? Law as a profession. Law as a profession. Sidney Carton's work as a lawyer is sure to be clever, even brilliant, but our interest in him has to do with his human qualities per se rather than a professional predicament, which tests the moral strength of those qualities. His moral strength is to be sure tested but by that international crisis, by the evolution, and not insignificantly by the constraint and turmoil of love. It's a Dickens way saying, yes, I have shown you, Bleak House, how terribly perplexing, crippling the law itself, and I have shown you Great Expectation, how terribly insinuating the law can. Morally and psychologically, practitioners struggled with the hypocrisy and work of industrial order, not totally unlike ours. Now let me take a lawyer and put him in the midst of tumultuous political sense, at time of drastic upheaval, and see not what happened to his profession and what he does his profession, but what happened to him as a human being. In Bleak House, the law is fog. In Bleak House, the law is fog. In Bleak House, the law is fog. In Great Expectation, at time, the law is snake. An aspect of men's post-Eden fate, a tale of two cities, law is given person trade, a footnote. Cities, the law is given person's trade, a footnote. As so much we can do, end up being an ongoing spiritual struggle, but all too commonly masked, the matter of fact, by the seeming exact excellence and profession and personal adjustment. Not that such was the case with Attorney Carton. He comes to us desolate, if nothing else. His corny stray is quite desolate, though the difference between the two Dickens wants us to realize right off is more apparent than real. The twin together offer evidence of mutual cynicism and essential boredom with life. Strayer is what his name suggested, till punishing of his money and pushing for his money and influences, but he is in the many aspect burnt out, morally for sure and psychologically as well. Carton is smarter by far, but also less self-productive. He is our professional man and who has a good hat on his shoulder and might go far, but seems curiously paralyzed, hence headed for alcoholism, suicide, and enough fate. Psychiatrist office where presumably he will be enough help resume work with the Strayer office world, abandon one sort of practice and another occupation. Now we are likely to declare the problem is not Carton professional and problem is Carton himself. We need to see a doctor, but do we find ourselves wanting Stray or have his head examined? Stray, whom Dickens described a man of little more than 30, but looking 20 years older than he was, a stout and red bluff and free from drawback of delicacy. Has a pushing way of shouldering himself morally and physically on companies of conversation. Once more, Dickens, our late 20th century social observer, quite ready to confound us with the ongoing riddle of his psychological era. Why it is that some who seem quite obnoxious in every way now are not usually regarded as candid of psychiatric scrutiny, while others in comparison exceedingly refined and decent are quite considered in serious difficulties and requiring a need of help as we choose we choose to call it. For Dickens, the law and the prison awaits those who violate the law are not only a recurrent subject to be explained in the novel after novel, nor was the interest in those subjects more consequence of the early personal experiences like the 19th century social critic and moralist who had not once been in trouble with the law or inside the prison. Dickens took close stock in emerging industrial order and was truly aghast. In hard times, he let us know how vicious he deemed not only the treatment accorded the poor but also the burden put upon those who were not at all poor. Again and again, we are reminded that exploitation cuts both away, and those who coldly manipulate others and bring upon their children to do so will pay stiff price indeed. The fear, suspiciousness, and nervous self-justifying smugness and isolating arrogance, which is in some amount to a vision of the blind leading the blind, the meaningly powerful wearing over the sadly hurt. In A Tale of Two Cities, he dares suggest that all London is prison. In Tale of Two Cities, he suggests that all London is a prison, so and Paris too. In Tale of Two Cities, all London is prison, and Paris too. So, London and Paris are as prison. The streets are narrow and confusing. Even Tellson Bank, which has office in both cities, to which the affluent come to tap their resources, is dark and dingy, has its own iron bars proper. The Paris Banks has a high wall and a strong gate. Mention is made of depositors arrested in prison. Jerry Cruncher, the bank's odd jobber, is an inmate of Minegear, and he has trust on high finger and at his beak and call of anyone and everyone. And the France loyalty and eventually its murderous revolutionaries, England's rich and powerful, no constant apprehension, can take little for granted, keep away eyes on friends and all too numerous enemies. And needless to say, the little dot is that theme of the pervasive confinement of jails. So little dot is a pervasive confinement of jail. Little dot is that theme of pervasive confinement. Of jail, that a lot of people badly isolated from one another reaches a climax. Marshalsea prison, circumlocution of office, bleeding heart yard, England's bureaucratic and legal and commercial and moral confusion, duplicities, aberrancies, as in some heavy collective constraint upon the particular mention of people. But Dickens not only regarded closely a nation and criticized its with earnest passion, humor, gentle or biting, and sometimes gentle and mock and extremely touching. Though caricatures and heroic portrays and emerges and shrewdly engaging characters of portrayal which have way of holding reader no matter their lapses in all too expectable. He was a mention and his own kind of moral vision. In his essay on Dickens, a fine trenchant and maybe an autobiographical one, George Orwell emphasizes his side of Dickens' a strong interest in seemingly justice. Overall, Orwell stresses the presence of Dickens' native generosity of mind. So Orwell says about Orwell says about Dickens, native generosity of mind. Orwell says about Dickens that Dickens has native generosity of mind. This is a very significant quote. Please remember, this is quote. Native generosity of mind. Reminds us how continually in those many novels we are reminded of twin importance, freedom and equality. Dickens hated all who lord it over others, as Orwell did. Let any one-time victim rises up for enough. They both knew, and the danger of yet additionally wrongdoing immediately arises. Our country, alas, has made such an observation, stresses through a tale of two cities, a huge and lawful banalities and results. Cause has been the untimely death of millions and prisoners who sees the nature given as prophetic novelist and imagination Dickens could never possibly force. In a memorable phrases overall calls Dickens a Christian out of the quasi-instinctive siding and oppressed against the oppressors and oppressed against the oppressor. Quasi-instinctive siding with the oppressed against In a memorable phrase, Orwell calls Dickens a Christian out of quasi-instinctive siding with oppressed against the oppressor. And one can scarcely disagree. Dickens took careful, calculated aim at those oppressors, and like Orwell knew that they can appear out of nowhere, it seems, in every possible location, among the poor as well as the rich, among people of all races and backgrounds, among professional men and intellectuals as well as men of commerce, and among women as well as men. Mad me defarge in a tale of two cities need only be mentioned. The Skimpole in Bleak House, whose clever self-enhancing egoism bears an astonishingly resemblance to what can be found in various centers of literary and artistic activity. Skimpole in Bleak House, whose clever self-enhancing egoism bears an astonishing resemblance to what can be found in various centers of literary and artistic activities. Skimpole in Bleak House, whose clever self-enhancing egoism bears an astonishing resemblance of what can be found in various centers of literary and artistic activities. Dickens knew well what we have called the culture of narcissism. Dickens knew the culture of narcissism. Culture of narcissism. The seductive power of mirror is his prison have mirror in them and a double jeopardy. Seductive power of mirror. Seductive power of mirror. President Charles Darnay fights for his life and the help of lawyers, a strayer and cartoon. Even the member of the crowd watching the trial become mirror reflecting the witness. There is of course the necessarily so last-ditch narcissism at stake in many cartoons. A life itself will be saved or lost. Not to mention the personal reputation, sense of self-worth of this what lawyers, but Dickens any particular trial is emblematic and Kafka's the trial. Our desperate situation as human beings revealed by our inability to record just how trapped we are within our own world of eager pretentiousness and by the endless cruelties, circularities we pursue as if we were a straight road to an absolute certain destination. Dickens himself, despite the gloom so many of his stories contain, and grotesque quality to their happy ending, that what not without hope. He found decency in ordinary, unassuming people, humble of this earth, and we are from sight. We were solemnly born and inherited in the world. He saw plenty of evil children, lawyers and victims, and born prisoners who never seem to get their sentence fully commuted. Yes, Pip marries Estella, one ending of great expectation tells us. Yet Easter Summerson marries Dr. Alan Woodcourt, Bleak House informs us. Easter Summerson marries Dr. Alan Woodcourt, Bleak House. Yet Arthur Kleinman finds Little Dorrit, and Sidney Cardell finds lucid vanity. And though those who women, each man is affirmed, all the pain and suffering of their early lives somehow cause the received in personal significance. But in Dickens' novels, the manner, the meanness and brutishness of this life is made abundantly clear. Pip, a famous moment of searching introspections, his trenchant statement about himself and his life turns into an authorial comment on justice and its vicissitudes, on our fate and human being born into an arbitrary, imperfect world soon enough to depart. In the Little Dorrit world, in which children have their expectation, existence, and whosoever bring them up, is there nothing so finally perceived and so finally felt as injustice? It may be only small injustice that the child can be exposed, but the child is small, and the world is small, and it's rocking. And according to the sales as big born within himself, I have sustained from my babyhood and perpetual conflict with injustice. I had known from the time I could speak that my sister, in her capricious and violent coercion, was unjust to me. I had cherished a profound conviction that her bringing me up by hand gave her no right to bring me up by a jerk. Though all my punishments disgraced fast, legal, and penitential performance, I had nursed this assurance and to my communing so much with, in a solitary and unprotected way, in a great part for the fact that I was morally timid and very sensitive. But there is the same author knew a chance to reverse things, to render kind of, but there is same author knew a chance to reverse things, to render a kind of fitting if finite justice, a redemption here on the earth that must precede any further redemption to be gained elsewhere in the universe. Dickens' interest in practical, everywhere charity and kind Jesus, again and again he walked Galilee nearly 2,000 years, and we all underscored in this extraordinary passage in Little Dorrit. Another one of the earth, looking back as force dark reaching. He never sung, so that first article in this code, morals and must be practical humility, with looking well to his feet, and that he could never mount on duty on earth, restitution on earth, and first step but forward. Straight was the gate and narrow was the way. First straight and narrow, then So it goes, or we hope it will go. It will go for ourselves a chance to do the Lord's will in way. The short daily task, obligations, possibility of charity. Sometimes I hear Dickens faulted he's so wrong, but he failed to give us an overall scheme to reach them. And the view in the various all encompassing ideologies we have seen work in this century, once offering personal and social rehabilitations on the grandest scale, we can be grateful maybe for Dickens' restraint, reformism, his human egalitarian liberalism, and one also insisted his own to earth Christianity, so beholden to Jesus Nazareth rather than the various principalities and power which we have come to speak so confidently, if not imperiously, his name in this. In that last regard, Orwell does well to quote from a letter Dickens wrote to his youngest son in 1868. You will remember that you have never at home been harassed about religious observance or mere formalities. I have always been anxious not to weary my children with such things before they are old enough to form opinion reacting to them. You will therefore understand the better that I have now most solemnly impressed upon you the truth and beauty of the Christian religion, and it came from the Christ himself, and impossibility of your own going for wrong if you humble but heartily respected. Never abandoned the wholesome practical practice of saying your own private prayers night and nothing. I have never abandoned it, and I know the comfort of it. What is the law but necessarily finite effort in our part of way, and some earthly vision which at least partake in a small way of that larger biblical vision offer us the Hebrew prophet Jeremiah, Isaiah, Amos, and the one who's followed them, Jesus Christ. A vision of what? A moral vision, surely, a vision put negatively at first and what must not done, so that over time we all edge nearer to more honorable and decent world. Equal justice will not only be a phrase cut in the marble of the particular Washington DC building, but something known and felt to be a daily given the world over. Meanwhile, we all struggle with this life's hardship, its terrible lack of justice. Of course, for so many, we struggle also to figure out how to change the state of affair, though among and law returns. Though the law challenges, though law argued and argued through interventions here and there on behalf of one person then another. In the midst of those struggles, a moral vision such as Charles Dickens is no small ally. He takes in his hands the abstract matter of subject matter, legal ethics, given them the complex, provocative life of a story. He gives us characters as fates shape it. He gives us chance and circumstances, good luck and bad luck, humor and melancholy, and opportunity not to figure out the world theoretically but put oneself in correctly. As a moral visionary, he left a situation to heed, people to know, a whole range of ethical matter to attain in a very special way, a personal immersion enabled by a novel. One can, he knew, to use the phrase of contemporary American novelist, the Southern Walker Percy, get all as a A's and flunk life. Get all A's and flunk life. Once one can, he knew, do well in the course of called legal ethics, moral reasoning, and go on to be as not so honorable and straightforward, compassionate human being. The novel of Dickens reminds enough of people who preach the good turn, offer the fail to heed an everyday particular of their lives, the Mr. Jellyby of his world. The novels of Dickens offer us ourselves, plenty of us, all too many of us thoroughly wretched, and yet more and few of us sometimes grace. Recently, I came across this observation made by Viktor Frankl, a physician who only barely survived a year of Hitler's hell. We who live in concentration camp can remember the man who walked through the hut, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread, they may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedom, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So that's what a beautiful thing. Okay, that they have been few in number, but they suffer sufficient proof that everything can be taken away. So this is what beautiful. So the everything can be taken away. That everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedom, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. As one goes over, the words again and again, surely it's not inappropriate to think of Charles Dickens and his enormous hard and moral quarry, which he dug and dug, the lifetime efforts he knew. Constrained we all are, how hard it is for us to break free, to achieve measures of continuing dignity is exhortation of particular profession. The law was meant to honor its possible role in our lives, but it's best a bulwark against anarchy and pointer in the direction of fairness. Bulwark. So, law is a bulwark. And lapse, as we all know, with this century have also come to know, to point that the often isolated and lonely good folk and world of the Charles Dickens seem to reach out to join hands with us. Dr. Frankl described, often all amid the terrible human disaster of our history, yet also heroes whom each of us need to remember with a certain tenacity, perhaps as we go our daily lives and daily business, including that of law. Thank you. So please listen this video again and again, watch it and do best in your exam. And please do subscribe my channel, Dr. Anju Gurawa.